High interest debt is one of the toughest opponents you'll face. Unless you power up with a SoFi personal loan. A SoFi personal loan could repackage your bad debt into one low fixed rate monthly payment. It's even got super speed, since you could get the funds as soon as the same day you sign. Visit SoFi.com/power to learn more. That's SoFi.com/POWER. Loans originated by SoFi Bank N.A. Member FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. NMLS 696891.
You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women who replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women, according to the NIH and CDC. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee, and you will hear me interview sisters in loss who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Now let's get started.
Welcome to the Sisters in Loss podcast. Thank you for joining us, Ashlee.
Thank you.
So I like for you to begin with our guests, just sharing a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So my name is Ashlee Epps. I'm a mother of 2, one of which is my angel baby. Professionally, I've worked in healthcare for over 14 years. I'm currently in law school pursuing a Juris Master's in healthcare law and regulation. I'm not adulting, as I like to say. I like to spend time with my husband and with my family. I like to shop. I love to travel. The pandemic has kind of put a damper on my traveling, but that's me in a nutshell.
Nice. I would love to hear more about your journey to law school. We can talk about that at another time, but obviously you have a story to tell. So I would love for you to just take us back on your journey to motherhood and share with us your law story.
Sure. So it was 2020. As we know, 2020 was a year like no other for everybody. That was when we were really in the thick of the pandemic. And it was October of 2020 when I first found out I was pregnant. This was with my second child. And it shocks me for several reasons. One, because a few months prior, about 3 months prior to me finding out, I had lost my job. So we were down to a 1-income household. My husband at the time had just recently had a reduction in hours. So we not only lost one income, we lost a portion of the only income we had coming in. We already had at that time, my son was around 10 months, about to turn 10 months. And I had just started law school 3 months prior to me finding out I was pregnant with my second child. And so I was stressed. My initial reaction to the pregnancy was not, yay, we're having another baby. It was, where's this money coming from? How are we going to feed 2 kids? We have 1 income. I'm doing, I'm raising one. I'm in school. We don't have any help. It's a pandemic. What is going on? This is a lot to take on at this point. And so my husband felt the stresses as well, but he got to a place of excitement way quicker than I did, because in my mind, I'm like, well, of course, because you don't have to carry this baby. My first pregnancy was not the easiest, emotionally, physically, anything. There was a lot of specialist appointments because they were concerned that my son had heart problems and this and chromosomal abnormalities. So I just immediately, when I found out I was pregnant, I just flashed back to all those doctor's appointments and the multiple, he's going to have this and he's going to have that. And I just, my body tensed up and I said, I cannot do this again. And I mean, my firstborn ended up being perfectly healthy, no issues at all. But just the process of going through that again, it frightened me, honestly. It just frightened me. And so I remember that time that I found out, I literally, after I told him, I just grabbed my keys and I got in the car. And I just rode around the city and I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I eventually, a couple of weeks had passed, and I came to a place of acceptance, and I was like, you know what? God wants us to have a second child. He clearly has a plan. I'm gonna chill out and let him figure it out. So I went about, I scheduled my OB appointment. And when I arrived to my OB and I got in the room, the first thing she said after we chit-chatting and she did her exam, she said, I don't think this is a viable pregnancy. Because she noticed some spotting. So I was like, oh, okay. Not really registering, heard what she said, but was like, well, let's just see what the ultrasound says. So she was like, yeah, because I want you to get an ultrasound. Let's get some blood work. Let's see what's going on. And so I wasn't too concerned initially because I had spotting with my first pregnancy. So it wasn't for me, like a major red flag. It was like, well, I've had that before and it wasn't an issue before. So I went to the ultrasound, got that done. And as the technician is doing my exam, I see my baby on the screen. I see the heartbeat and all the anxiety, the fear that I had, all of that went away. And I was just like, oh, that's my baby. Like, this is going to be amazing. I don't know why I'm stressing. Everything's going to be fine, until I looked at the technician's face, and her face was just straight bone straight, no smiles. And I'm looking at her and I'm looking at the screen. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, something's not right. So she clicks whatever she clicks on her machine. She said, all right, let's just go talk to the doctor. And so I was like, oh, well, yeah, she wants me to get blood work too. She was like, no, we're just going to go talk to the doctor. And so I said, oh, okay. All right. So we go back into the exam room and she leaves. The doctor comes in and she's like, all right, you have an ectopic pregnancy and you need surgery this week. I'm sorry, I have what now? So it just took me a minute because I'm like, what do you mean? I'm sorry, let's rewind this. What do you mean I have, okay, hold on. So I call my husband, and I'm telling him he's just as silent as I am. And then I call my mom on three-way and I tell her what's going on. And all of us are just on the phone, just dumbfounded, like, what? Like, what? And so the doctor is like, do you have any questions? Is there anything that you need to ask me? And I was just so shocked. I couldn't even think of anything, because I'm just like, what do I do with this information? Like, what? So I just sat there for a minute. She said, obviously you need to process this. She was like, but you don't have long to process it because you would need surgery like this week, like I told you. So I'm going to give you the rest of this day to process, but you need to call us back tomorrow so we can go ahead and get this surgery scheduled. And the ride home was just torture. Because my mind, I got home, you know how you have those drives and you get to a location, you don't remember driving at all. So I was just in the zoned out. And I got home and I, was still trying to act like myself. And I just remember sitting on the couch with my husband, watching TV, but not really watching it. No one's really saying anything. And I just get up and go to the restroom. And as I'm washing my hands, I just start crying. And next thing I know, I'm on the floor, just crying, just in a ball on the floor, just crying. And I pulled out my phone because I couldn't verbally express how I was feeling. So I just wrote something in my notes, pulled up my notes, and I was just typing away. And I wrote a poem about this situation. And it was entitled To the One I Lost. And so I sat on that bathroom floor in tears, trying my hardest not to cry too hard because I didn't want to alert my husband and my son in the other room. And I just did not know what else to do in that moment. I just didn't, I was at a point where I couldn't even say a prayer because I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And so I eventually got myself together enough to get off of the floor. And I just went into the room with my husband and I shared what I had wrote in my phone. And he just came and gave me, a hug or whatever in that moment. So, fast forward to me calling the doctor, I eventually, got the surgery scheduled eventually. But fast forward to the day of my scheduled procedure, my mom stays out of town. So she had got in like the night before my procedure, like very late, almost midnight or until the early morning. And so I was just chit-chatting with her, and we were just talking. And while I was talking to her, I felt weird. And that's the only way I know how to explain it. Like, it wasn't any pain per se. Something didn't feel right in my body. And so I just sat there for a minute. I was like, okay, well, it's not painful. Let me see. So I said my goodnights to my mom, and I was preparing for bed, and I was like, something doesn't seem right. So I called my OB, and I was waiting for them to call back. And while I was waiting, I just told my husband, I was like, you know what, let's just get dressed and head over to the hospital. So en route, like, I still wasn't in pain, but en route to the hospital, from the time I left my house to get to the hospital, that's when the pain started while I was in the car. And so I remember pulling up to the emergency room door. They had staff to come out and do, temperature checks and everything, because we're still in the midst of a pandemic. They're doing that protocol. I'm explaining to them that I have surgery already scheduled later on this afternoon. This is why. I go give them the whole rundown. And so as I'm talking to the staff, my husband left to go park the car. And I remember, as I'm still at the registration desk, I hear my husband, and I hear the staff stop them and say, "You can't come in." And I just remember turning around and looking. And by this time, they had started to wheel me to the room. And so my husband calls me. He's like, "They won't let me in because of COVID. So I have to sit in the car." I was like, okay. So I get into the room, and again, I'm in this place of, what in the world? I'm in this, ER rooms are all white, just this cold white room alone. By this time, I'm in severe pain, and my support system is in the parking lot. That was really hard for me in that moment, because I felt so isolated, and not just because my husband wasn't there, but for me, because I felt like God wasn't there. Because I was like, how could you leave me like this? Like, this is crazy. And so as I'm sitting there just in my feelings, in walks the nurse, and the nurse is pregnant. And so I'm like, I can't do this. I cannot do this. And she was pretty far along. And I just remember thinking to myself, this is so cruel. This is so cruel. I'm losing my life, my baby's life. I'm losing the life that I'm carrying. And in comes this nurse who appears to have this perfect pregnancy. And it was a lot, because I'm like, you're carrying the life that I'm essentially losing. And while she was trying to hook me up to take my vitals and do all of these things, her belly was just like rubbing against my arm. And I was just like steady trying to move and get out the way. And it was, I just felt like it was just cruel. It was just like a cruel punishment. Like, wow. When she finished doing her duties, I asked her, I said, can my husband come in? He's in the car. I really need my husband. She was like, I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, due to the hospital rules and COVID, we can't let anyone in. And so I was just like, all right. So she left the room, and it was just me again, just alone with my thoughts. And the doctor comes in not too long after, and I'm explaining to her what, the surgery I was scheduled to already have that day, just later on in the day. And I told her I already paged my OB, and they called back en route while I was en route to the hospital, and told me they were on their way anyway. And so she went ahead and paged them again. And by the time a few minutes passed, the OB joins her in the ER, to really describe what the next steps would be and all of that. And so at the end of that conversation, me talking to the two doctors, the ER doctor looks at me, and she said, "You have someone here with you?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "My husband's in the parking lot. Staff wouldn't let him in because of the COVID rules and everything y'all have in place." And so she looks at me and she says, "I'm going to make an exception for you, because you have a lot going on. Call your husband. I'm going to meet him at the front door. Tell him to meet me at the front door so I can get him in." And that was so huge for me. Just that one little just something so I could have somebody in the room with me so I didn't feel so isolated. So my husband was able to come in. And even though my husband couldn't do anything for me physically in that moment, just his presence alone was so calming. They eventually, like shortly after my husband got there, they had an ultrasound scheduled, and they confirmed that my tube had ruptured, and they were working on, clearly moving up my surgery time at this point because I had some internal bleeding going on, and all of that. So fast forward to surgery time. Surgery was smooth, no issues. It was an outpatient procedure, so I was out that same day, later on that evening after. And I thought in my mind, I'm like, all right, well, my baby is gone, and so it's back to life as normal. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think I would really struggle the way I did when it came to my grief. I was like, all right, well, I've had a surgery that was traumatic, but it's over and done with. So moving on with life. And that wasn't the case at all. It really wasn't the case. For the next 2 weeks, I acted like nothing was wrong. I was trying to keep my same routine. In fact, the day after I lost my baby, I attended a virtual baby shower and a virtual baby reveal. That's how much in denial I was. I did. And so the reveal was first. I logged in and was like, oh, it's the girl. Oh, yay. Congrats. Whoop, whoop, whoop. All right. An hour after that was the baby shower for one of my husband's friends. And I sat through that. I was like, oh, that's so great. Y'all having a baby. Woo, woo, woo. And I wasn't taking my emotions into consideration at all. I, in my mind, am supposed to be this strong superwoman. So I can handle this. This is nothing, I always had the idea, I never wanted to rain on anyone else's parade, just because I'm having a hard time. I never want to be the one, well, I'm not attending just because I'm going through. But it was in this process that I learned healthy boundaries, especially when it comes to emotional stuff, and understanding that wasn't the time for me to attend. No matter how supportive I wanted to be in that moment, that wasn't it. But even after doing that, I continued to try to do my day-to-day. I was still reading my books for school. And my mom was like, listen, just email your professors and tell them you need a week or so. I'm like, no, because I don't want to fall behind on classwork. I don't have time for this. I have to do this. And she's like, Ashlee, just relax. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to relax because I have this to do. I have this. I have a son. I have a husband. I still have to do this. And she's like, Ashlee, I'm like, Mom, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. And so I kept that. I kept it up for 2 weeks. And one day I just lost it. And I was just crying. I told my husband, like, I need to go somewhere and scream because this is too much. It's too much. And so my husband and I went to a park, and I just really opened up, and I was like, it's my fault. We lost the baby. It's all my fault. And it's because I wasn't excited when I first found out. It's because it must be something I've done in my past. God is mad at me. This is my punishment. It's all my fault. I did it. It was my fault. I should have been excited. Maybe if I was excited when I first heard about it, we wouldn't be going through this. Maybe this. And I just went down this path of, it's my fault. I did something. God is mad at me. It was all on me was my thing. And so my husband just really kind of talked me through that. He talks about his feelings and his emotions about it. And so again, I'm back in a place in my mind, like, okay, I've released my feelings. My husband's released his. We're good. All right, this is it. I'm healed. I'm good. I'm whole now. Wrong. So the journey just continued. There would be moments where I could just be sitting there watching TV, and out of the blue, I'm just crying. And I'm like, why am I still crying? Like, why am I crying? And I remember one moment in particular, I was just watching TV. I had my textbooks open. I wasn't really studying. I was alternating between the two. And again, just another outburst of tears. And my husband happened to walk in, and I tried to hide my face because in my mind, I'm like, I know he's so tired of seeing me cry. Like, I know he's over it because I'm tired of crying. So I know he's tired of seeing me cry. And he just came over, he gave me a hug. And I just whispered to him, I said, I'm so tired of crying. like, I'm tired. And his response to me was, you may be tired, but you're not done. And that freed me on so many levels, because I had this expectation that, okay, I should be over this by now. Because at this point, this is a couple of months past. Like, I should be over it at this point. And those words just provided me comfort and helped me to really understand that this is a process. This is not a one time, okay, I've talked about my feelings, we're good now. This is a continuing process. And it is just what, people say, it's a journey. And you have your good days. Some days are better than the others. And you have days where it's just, I'm just a complete mess. And that's okay. It's okay. And I had to learn that. And so that's just one of the things that, as far as the healing journey, has been a roller coaster. And I am not used to my emotions being everywhere. Again, I'm that put together individual where, I have to hold it together and have it together, and can't be around here crying all the time. And all that went out the window when I lost my little one. It's been a journey. I could definitely say that it's been a journey.
So much for sharing all of that. So when you had your ectopic, you mentioned that your fallopian tube ruptured. So when they went in, did they actually remove your entire fallopian tube and your ovaries? Like, how did that work for you? Do you know?
I do know. It was just the fallopian tube, just one of them. So I still have both ovaries, and I only have one tube, clearly. But yeah.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for your transparency and sharing just the journey post coming home. Because for some reason, I've been telling people that, pre-COVID, a lot of the procedures that people would do may have lasted longer, like they spent more time in the hospital. So I always tell people, don't think everything I'm telling you now is what's happening now. This pre-COVID, this is not what have happened during a ectopic pregnancy, a miscarriage, or anything that you're happening. Now through COVID, what it's shown us is that, all of the things that would have required a little bit more longer care in the hospital are becoming day of procedures, where they're literally bring you in early in the morning, and then you're in and you're out in the afternoon for a procedure that they would have kept you in the hospital probably for 2 or 3 days. Then they probably would have, for ectopics, because it's still a surgery, right? They would have probably wrote you out of work for 2 weeks, But now, since people are working from home, it's been easier for doctors to be like, okay, we're just going to bring you in and get you this procedure done, and then you go home and rest, and you can actually physically go back to work because you're working from home.
Yeah.
It's been different for me as a doula to really normalize what healing looks like for people as they're navigating through loss, as they're navigating through having a full pregnancy, because prior to, we had more time. Now it's been shortened because obviously a lot of hospitals are trying to give up that space to other patients and have open beds for COVID patients. And it's a detriment to us, because a lot of us are put in those situations like yourself where you're by yourself and you're like, these nurses aren't coming to check on me. I'm in here for hours by myself, and I can't talk to anyone. I don't have anyone in here, and I'm going through one of the most painful and traumatic experiences I've ever had. And I don't even have my partner here, like that's the main person. They wouldn't even let him come in. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think people need to understand and normalize pre-COVID and where we are now as we're in the midst of it. Because I feel like people are like, oh, we're back, everything's back open. No, we're still in the midst of it. COVID is probably not going to go away for a while. It's just going to be minimized of people dying from this disease. So I understand the precautions that the hospital took, but I wish that, we were more empathetic about and compassionate about the people that we need in those times we need them the most. So I would love for you to share more about how you have journeyed these last few months. I mean, I feel like the first year post loss is difficult, right? You're going through, like you mentioned, attending baby showers, baby reveals, holidays. How has that been for you as you've gone through your grieving and healing journey?
Yeah, it's been difficult. I'm So what, I'm a couple of months or a couple of weeks away from my exact 1 year mark. I can say all of that, like my surgery happened November of 2020. So Christmas of 2020 was extremely hard for me for several reasons. I absolutely love Christmas, right? So now Christmas for me is bittersweet. Christmas was the time we were going to announce the second baby, and had this whole cute idea. My son was going to have on I'm promoted to Big Brother shirt and all these things. And it didn't happen. My firstborn, his birthday is actually a couple of days before Christmas. So it was just so much going on. Again, I'm on this keep the face of, yay, we're celebrating your first birthday. But knowing this was also like a couple of days from now will be the time when we would reveal about the second one. So that was rough. So what my husband did for me for Christmas, because I like personalized ornaments. I try to get ornaments for special occasions and special memories. So he got an ornament made for me specifically for our baby, which just touched my heart. So there's a way every year that I could remember my baby. He also got me a little something for my work desk, statue of sorts. It just has a sweet little poem about it. And so I appreciate things like that. But even as I progress through this year, one of the things as far as me handling my grief is journaling. Journaling has been huge, 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 huge for me because it allowed me a space to really talk about my emotions and my feelings, one, without anybody talking about or trying to give me feedback or, well, everything will work out. None of that. It was simply, today I'm mad and I'm mad because of this. Today I'm sad and I'm sad because of this. And to just really, everything that I would not be able to verbalize, I was able to write. And that was very therapeutic for me. Reading my Bible, of course, to be honest, it took me a while to get back to it. I needed a moment. I was never mad at God. I just had a whole lot of questions. So I was never mad. It was just like, yeah, I'll get to it at some point. But I did realize my prayers in the beginning versus now, like I still prayed, but I never touched the loss when I prayed. It was simply, God, thank you for waking me up. Thank you for protecting my family. Thank you for the provision you're providing for us. That's it. That's all you can get from me right now. I can't do anything more than that. But as time progressed, I did get to a place of, okay, God, let's talk, right? This is my heart. This is how I'm feeling. And I understand that I may not get an answer, but this is me. And I need you. I need something, I need something. And I just came to a revelation that in those times when I was in the hospital, where I felt so alone and I felt like he had abandoned me and he neglected me, it just hit me because even though I had that internal bleeding and all of that going on, it was nowhere near the amount that it should have been. So even in the midst of chaos and even in the midst of that, he still had his hand on me because that situation should have been so much worse than what it was. And so just those little revelations along the way that was like, God, you were there. I didn't see you in the midst of everything, but you were there. So beginning to understand that, thanking him for being with me, even in those times when I felt like he wasn't. And so again, that was a process that wasn't immediate. I think, especially as Christians, we are kind of taught in the church we need to always be positive. We can't come to God with the bad. We can't question. We can't do any of this. And that's not the case. As long as you approach him in reverence and respect, you can do those things. Like there are tons of passages in the Bibles where people have questions, and so coming to understand that, okay, this is more of a conversation. I need to hear from you. And I understand that I have to be still to hear. And that was critical for me. One of the things that came out of this process is that I'm actually writing a book. That was never my intention. And it simply started from that one poem in the bathroom where I was just in tears. That one poem turned into many other poems and many other poems. And so I was just listening to my bishop one Sunday and he was preaching. And he was like, that writing you have and those journals that you're keeping, that's a book, that's somebody's guide through life. And I was just like, okay, well, he ain't talking to me. A lot of people write. That's not for me. And then I was doing a project with my husband. We were taking some pictures for a project we were working on. And the photographer had no knowledge of what the bishop had said. And I kept it in my mind. So I was like, maybe, but nah, I don't know. So the photographer made a statement. He was like, one of the pictures I took, he said, that looks like it needs to be on the book cover. And I was just looking at him like, okay. All right. We're going to dismiss that too. I'm going to keep it, but all right, next. And so I got a third confirmation just about being an author. And I was like, okay, pause. This was never the plan for me to write a book of any sorts at all. So it was just a process of, okay. So I kind of went back through my journals and I went back through my poems and I went back through these things. And so I said, well, if I'm supposed to write a book, then I need some assistance, some coaching as far as book, because I do scholarly writing. I don't know anything about this lane. So I ended up finding a coach who helped me to navigate that process. And so in the book, I essentially share my journeys, the ups, the downs, how I went through that journey of why me, why this happened. I talk about the isolation and the denial. And I talk about grace, how you have to give yourself grace in this healing space. I think that's so, so important, because how I talked about, I put a timeline on myself. In my mind, by this time, I should be absolutely fine. Nothing should be wrong with me. I should no longer be crying and doing all these things. And that's just not the case. So being able to extend grace to yourself and to others around you. And then grief and joy can exist in the same space. Because I know my family and I was recently took a vacation and I saw my son and my husband together. But as I watched them play, I got sad right behind that, because I was like, my child should be here. And they're so just understanding that moving forward does not mean forgetting your baby. In fact, it means finding different ways to honor your baby. And for me, honoring my baby is the small like ornaments and stuff that my husband got for me. It's this book. This book is essentially, even though my baby was only here for a short time, this is their impact on the world. This is what this book is. And so it's to help other women who are going through this process. And so I'm excited that this journey, even though it's been extremely difficult, extremely hard, win wishes on anybody, but that something is coming out of it that can help others. That's huge for me. That's huge for me. So yeah, that's how it is.
Perfect. I love that you're writing a book. I'm excited. You're going to come back and tell us about it when you're finished and ready to publish it.
Yes, I will.
So you talked about journaling. What other tools can really help you navigate this journey? Any tools, any resources, any other books that you may have read that help you out? Can you share with us?
Yes. So my friends, they sent me a care package when they found out. One of the books was called Love Baby. It's actually a devotional. And that book's helped me out a lot on the process early on. It just talks about, everything I've said, how you're feeling initially. And the one thing I really found helpful about that book too is that it addressed the relationship with spouses and how spouses grieve differently. I think that during the loss, there's a lot of focus on the mom, and I understand why. But there's an aspect when it comes to marriages that is not heavily addressed. And I appreciated that book acknowledged that as well. Like I've already said, the Bible, but specifically the book in the Bible that helped me a lot was Job. Because Job experienced a lot of loss in a very short amount of time. And so reading that and really seeing how he processed that and how that story played out was very helpful. Here recently, I'm getting back to self-care. Self-care is so important. That's something I neglected early on in my journey, just out of just being me and just being stubborn and like I have other things to do. But I can't stress enough the importance of self-care, and not just, most people think self-care is just like physical stuff, exercise and eat right and rest, but it's other things, your mental self-care, your emotional self-care, your spiritual self-care. All of this is very, very important. So finding activities to feed all of those during this process is essential. So these last couple of months, my focus has really been on just self-care and making sure that I'm not just exercising, but that I am reading my Bible, reading my devotions, that I'm praying, that I am engaging in something stimulating, for my mental. So those are some other things that are helpful as well.
Absolutely. We are all about self-care and making sure that we are pouring back into ourselves. I did not tell you this, but this is me starting back podcasting. I had took a few months off just so because this is hard work in general, but I needed time off for myself to pour back into myself no differently and focus on some things I wanted to focus on. So being able to take some time away from things, even though I love podcasting, I still needed a break.
Right.
So
Right.
that was my form of self-care. So now I'm so excited to be back. In the interview is just sharing stories of phenomenal women like you who are resilient and who are still on this journey and are willing to share their stories in this manner. So I would love to wrap up with you leaving our listeners with encouraging words. You know, what encouraging words do you have for our listeners who have gone through a similar experience through COVID-19, whether they've lost a baby, whether they've lost a job, whether they are just, going through, this time of uncertainty? What encouraging words can you leave with our listeners?
So I would say, and this may sound cliche, but the only way through is through. When it comes to grief and the loss of your child, the only way to deal with grief is to grieve. And it's okay if you're not okay. There are going to be days where you're going to be a complete mess. Embrace that. It's fine. It's going to happen. I would say too, to remember that you are not alone. I know at times, just like I did, it can feel like you are all by yourself in this. But you're not. God is with you for one. And then two, there are communities out there who are ready to embrace you to kind of help you navigate this road. I know Erica has her community out there. And there are other resources, that you can reach out to. So I never want someone to feel like they're in this by themselves and that they have to go on this journey alone completely. That's not it. And the third nugget I would say is that moving forward does not mean forgetting. There is a life after loss. I know when you're in the thick of it, you are not going to see it. It's going to feel like you can't make it, but you can. You can. And there is life after loss, and just getting to that space. And even when you get to that space, just finding ways to honor your baby. I would say just remember those tidbits.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ashlee, for being on the podcast and sharing your story. I would love for listeners to connect with you after this episode. So share with us, where can we connect with you online, your social media, your website, all of the above?
Sure. So my website is being built, but as far as social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. It's Ashlee Speaks LLC, and Ashlee is spelled ASHLEE, Speaks LLC. And I have a lot of self-care tips up there, and just different things that help navigate people through their grief as well on my sites.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ashlee. And
thank you.
When that book is ready to be published, so we can have you back to share more about the book and your journey there.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com. To stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter, please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.
What's better than pad thai and pepperoni pizza delivered at once? Pad thai and pepperoni pizza delivered for free. It's possible with the Wonder app. Mix and match as many restaurants as you'd like, from Greek to barbecue, all brought to you with $0 delivery fees. Order online or visit a dine-in location near you to explore our endless cuisine options. Get 50% off your first meal with code FREEDELIVERYNYC. That's code FREEDELIVERYNYC for 50% off your first order, only on the Wonder app or wonder.com. Terms apply. See wonder.com/new customer for more.